We're glad to see you. Before I forget, because that's why we have Joseph doing the announcements, because I'm real bad at them. I always forget everything. But one thing I didn't think about telling him. So some people have asked us about the music that Joseph and Madison are singing in the meetings, which is great. We really appreciate your ministry. It is a true blessing to me. I like it so much. Thank you. But we can't record them in the videos because then we get copyright strikes, because even if they're songs from the hymns, I don't know how that all works on YouTube, but any music at all causes us problems on our YouTube channel when we stream these. So we can't put them in the YouTube videos. But what we're doing is we're recording them separately starting today, and we will be putting them on the Freeborn Church website. So if you want to download just the music, that is going to be available for now in audio format. I will create a podcast channel, so you can go into your podcast app, and you can just subscribe to it, and it'll automatically download the music as it comes out, and you can have it on your phone or your computer or whatever there. So that's how we're going to be doing all the music. Don't worry, we're not going to be picking up any of your singing. We've had enough of that. It's just going to be this from up here, right? Nothing from the cheap seats. So that's all good. All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20. And we're going to start reading in verse 20. And the title for today's sermon is The Giver. Last week we talked about the gift, who was Jesus Christ. When he was incarnate, he came in the flesh as God's perfect and greatest gift ever. And he wasn't just the gift to us, even though we tend to look at things that way, right? We look at things as they benefit us. But Christ was the universal gift, and he was planned before the foundation of the world. But today we're going to talk about the giver, and I'm not going to make you wonder about that much and scratch your head. Jesus Christ is the great giver. Matthew chapter 20, verse 20. Then came to him the mother of Zebedee's children with her sons, worshiping him, and desiring a certain thing of him. And he said unto her, What wilt thou? She saith unto him, Grant that these my two sons may sit, the one on the right hand and the other on the left in thy kingdom. This is where the sons are like, face plant. This is like, you got to be kidding me, Mom. Because here she comes and she's like, I want my children to be the special ones in the kingdom. I want my children to sit on the right hand and on the left. You know that caused all kinds of consternation with all the other apostles. And they're all looking at their mom saying, why are you asking this for us? Right? They obviously she was obviously campaigning for Mom of the Year award. All right. But Jesus answered and said, You know not what you ask. Are ye able to drink of the cup that I shall drink of, and to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? Now this is interesting, and it's interesting as it pertains to the King James Bible, because most modern translations will lose what we have here. The King James Bible is still using an older form of our English, where we still are differentiating between plural and singular personal pronouns. We don't do that today. We just say you. You hear a lot of people criticize the King James Bible because of the these and the thous, right? And the ye's and so on. But if you are reading from the King James Bible, then it'd be good for you to know this when you're reading this. When you read thee and thou, that is singular. Right? You are speaking to a single person. So if I was speaking to Missy, and I wouldn't say, are you going? I would say, are thine going? I wouldn't say exactly like that. But it would be the th, the thee form of it. That would be singular. And if I'm speaking to a group of people, then I would use the y, the ye, or the you. So we nowadays use you for everything, right? English is simplified. And that's fine. I'm not against that. I'm not saying we should all start speaking with these and thous. But as you're reading the Bible, you have to understand that the Greek was written with that same plural and singular distinctions, right? And the King James Bible was able to, because English allowed for that at that time, was able to translate that to us, and we can look at that and see if he is speaking to her singularly, saying she was asking for something she didn't understand, or if he was understanding that this was actually a request coming from all three of them, and he says that they all three did not know what they were asking because he uses the plural. So that's just something there as you're reading. Understand there's a reason. They didn't just use thee and thine and you and your and ye in order to make it sound more biblical. There's actually a very important reason why there are those distinctions in the King James Bible, and it's something that regrettably is lost in modern translations. As we get Bibles into more modern English, we're going to lose things like that occasionally, and that's one of the things that can be lost that is very helpful to be able to follow a narrative and to follow exactly how it all went down. So this is what Jesus is saying. He's saying not only is the mom not understanding what she's asking, but none of them are understanding what they're asking. So he's grouping them in, and he's basically saying that this isn't just the mom, sticking her nose into their business, but this is actually the three of them have approached, and she is the spokesman for those people. And he's telling her and her sons, you do not know what you're asking. That's what he's saying. And he says, are you able to drink the cup that I'm going to drink of? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism that I'm going to be baptized with? They say unto him, we are able. And he said unto them, ye shall drink indeed of my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared of my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were moved with indignation against the two brethren. But Jesus called unto him and said, ye know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Now, like I said, this caused consternation with the other apostles, the other disciples. They didn't like that these guys looked like they were cutting line. It looked to them like all of a sudden they wanted to be the boss of everybody. And the other disciples were indignant about this. And Jesus rebukes all of them. All of them. He rebukes the very ambitious sons of Zebedee, and he rebukes all of them and says, this is how the world behaves. This is the kind of rebuke we ought to print out and paste on our refrigerators. This is how the world behaves. Especially those of you where your downfall is the refrigerator, that's where you probably ought to paste that little sign. This is the way the world behaves. This is what Jesus is telling them. This is how the governments of the world operate. Those that are great are served by everybody. They sit in the best places. They wear the best clothes. He says that's not how it's going to be in the kingdom. That is not how it's going to be in things pertaining to the Son. He says, if you want to follow me, and you want to be great, you need to serve everybody else. Christianity is not a faith where we all attempt to see who can be the top dog. Every gift in the church is considered a gift of ministry. There is no gift in the church where you let everyone serve you. Some of us seem to think that that's our gift. My gift is to let you do your gift for me. No, there is no such gift in the church. All gifts in the church are ministering to others. And the greatest gifts are those where you minister from lower to more. not where you rule from up above upon everybody else. That gift doesn't exist in the church. There's only one throne in the church of Jesus Christ, and you're not sitting on it. Jesus Christ is the only one who sits on the throne of the church. He's the only one in charge. He's the only boss of everybody. And the rest of us, Jesus says, I want you to serve everyone else. And if you think that you don't need to serve anybody, then you don't understand Christianity. So that's what he's telling them. But I want you to pay attention to how he argues this point. He's going to make this point now, and this is how he makes it. He says, in verse 28, even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many. He says, look, I'm telling you that you all need to serve one another. And if you want to be great, you need to have the mindset of, I need to be then the servant of everybody. That's who's great in the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And he says, and to prove that point to you, and to make that point, I want you to understand that the Son of Man, the King of glory himself, did not come to earth to be served. Do you want to know why it was so difficult for those who had been waiting for the Messiah their entire life and the life of all their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents? They'd been waiting for Messiah for generations, and when he came, they missed him. There's a number of reasons why. You want to know a big reason why they missed him? Because he didn't come to be served. They could not fathom that who they'd been waiting for all this time would be on his knees washing the feet of his apostles, that would be sitting at a table with publicans and with harlots and with thieves and with traitors to the nation, speaking to them and winning their souls. They could not imagine that that could be the Messiah. They were looking for somebody sitting on a throne. They were looking for somebody with a crown on his head. They were looking for somebody born into nobility, not born in a manger. None of how the Messiah came made any sense whatsoever. And they consistently demonstrated their complete misunderstanding of who he was, where he came from, and what all that meant. They said, this can't be the Messiah. It's really curious how they say that. One group of them say, this can't be the Messiah because we know where he's from. He's from Bethlehem. We know where he's from. And it says that nobody will know where he's from. Of course, they didn't know where he was from, right? That's we're curious. And then the other ones say, well, this can't be the Messiah because he's from Galilee and we know he's from Bethlehem. They didn't know anything about him. They didn't understand anything about him. And when he started talking and speaking and acting and carrying out his purpose, none of it made any sense. And especially this part. Jesus Christ says, you need to model yourselves after me. And he says, I have come not to have things given to me. I did not come so people would minister to me. I came to minister to everybody. Christ came to minister to the whole world. Now the apostles, it took them a very long time to learn this. This was a lesson hard learned. Many years after this, they still had not comprehended this. And when the gospel started leaking out of the Jewish enclaves into the wider Gentile world, and people who were not Jews started believing the gospel, they were also indignant that this could be. They had a huge, they brought together a large gathering, a conference, a synod. Come together and let's talk about this in Jerusalem. How is this possible that Gentiles are getting saved? Because they were not cognizant. They did not remember that Jesus Christ had prophesied many times in his ministry that the gospel was going to be preached in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and into the uttermost parts of the earth. As they sat there in Jerusalem, they started to realize that this was not an abomination, and it wasn't even an anomaly, that the entire world being ministered to by Jesus Christ was the Father's eternal purpose. The gospel was not preached to us because the Jews, chose not to believe. That is a retroactive interpretive fallacy. God purposed for the gospel to extend to every creature. Because Christ did not come to be served by anybody. The Messiah didn't come to be served by the Gentiles. Some of the Jews had that belief that the whole world was going to serve them. And he's telling them, no, you don't understand. This isn't just that you're to serve your Jewish brethren, who you can barely stomach. You're going to serve all people. And one of the most revealing parts of Scripture that reveal God's sense of humor is when He takes the most Jewish of all the apostles, the Pharisee of Pharisees, and makes him the apostle to the Gentiles. I just love that. That's almost as good as when He takes the Son of Thunder and He makes him write the epistle of love. That's so good. Just love that irony. He took Paul the apostle and he sent him out to preach to the Gentiles and minister to them. This is the odd couple, if there ever was one. You have Peter, who basically didn't care. Paul shows up and Peter's like, hey, these Gentiles are great. I love their food. I love their parties. This is wonderful. But no, he doesn't take someone like that. He takes someone like Paul, who didn't like anything about the Gentiles when he wasn't saved. But then he turns him into someone who says, I am an apostle to the Gentiles. I magnify my office. Because he had finally understood Messiah did not come to serve only one nation. He came to serve all people. Jesus Christ came to the earth to serve you, to minister to you. It should not have been that way. It makes no sense that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God manifest in the flesh, came to earth to serve you. Makes no sense. And yet He did, and that's what He says here, because He is the great giver. I want you to understand that this ministry of Jesus Christ was unprecedented. There is nothing like it anywhere else. We can often mischaracterize or misunderstand and think that the ministry of Jesus Christ was like an extension of the Old Testament, right? That Jesus Christ just came in and He just stepped in and it just seems it's all normal and just continues out everything. He's just like continuing the role of Moses, continuing the role of the apostles. That is not true. That was true of John the Baptist. John the Baptist came in as the last prophet, as the extension of all the Old Testament, what it was and what it stood for, and he came in as the final piece of that part. But Jesus Christ was not an extension of anything that preceded Him. Anything. He came and fulfilled all of the promises about Him in the Old Testament, but He did not come to extend out the Old Testament. He came with an entirely groundbreaking ministry. There is nothing in Moses, there's nothing in Isaiah, there's nothing in Jeremiah that is any way a precedent for what Jesus Christ came to do. An incredibly unprecedented ministry. I think it's an enormous mistake to view Jesus Christ as being incrementally better than what preceded him. Like, everything was just like stepping up. You started at Adam and you started working your way up, Abraham and Moses, and you get better and better. And Jesus came and he was incrementally better than everything that came before him. No, that isn't the case. He is categorically better. For those that don't understand that difference or may not have heard me talk about this before, categorically better and incrementally better is like saying, you could say that a Toyota is better than a Ford. And that would be incrementally better. Or you could say a Toyota is better than a bag of chips. That's categorically better. Jesus Christ is better, according to the book of Hebrews, not a little better, not in the same category better. He's better in the sense that he's not of any of those things. Jesus isn't better than the angels because he's a better angel. He's better than the angels because he's the Son. He's not an angel. In every way that Christ is better, he is categorically better, which means he's not of any preceding categories. He completely broke the mold. And I want to look at and just focus on a few things as it pertains to him being the great giver that he broke the mold on and was so incredible at. I want you to consider the teaching that he gave. What did Christ give us? We often in the Lord's Supper commemorate his life that he gave. We commemorate his sacrifice, but I don't want to talk about those because we talk about them all the time. Not because I diminish them. I don't want you to think that somehow I'm pitting these against each other. Let's just set that aside, what we talk about in the Lord's Supper, and let's talk about a few things that Christ gave us that are unprecedented, that demonstrate what a tremendous giver he is. How he gave of himself. I want you to think about the teaching that Christ gave us. I think that we live under the benefit of a society that can now have the luxury to overlook the importance of Christ's teachings. I know that was a little complicated how I phrased it. Let me try to simplify that a little. But what I'm saying is, we live in a society that is a result of the teaching of Jesus Christ. And it is so widespread and common that I say you, it may not be you, you may not think this way, but a modern person can sit there in their comfortable chair and think, we don't need Jesus. Jesus is ridiculous. We don't need him, because they live in a society produced by his teaching. It's like all these wannabe quasi-socialists who live in capitalism and whine about capitalism. Because they get to say, it's not, socialism isn't that bad, it's not so terrible. Yeah, why don't you try going somewhere where you don't have any benefits from Jesus Christ, where you don't have any teaching of his whatsoever, any influence of his teaching, and you'll see the difference. It is a huge difference. You have no idea how far-reaching the teachings of Jesus Christ go. It's almost impossible for people who've lived within the last 1,500 years, let's say, to even comprehend the dramatic change in our world and in our society, all due not from some conquering prophet like Islam presents, but from a lowly servant who ministered ideas. Never once did Jesus ever advocate that his followers, by force, create any society. In fact, quite the opposite. When they came to apprehend Jesus and Peter takes out the sword and cuts off the ear of one, he says, hey, that is not how we're doing it. And he heals the man's ear. When Jesus is traveling and that village didn't want to receive him, and John and James, the sons of Zebedee, they say, Master, Let's call down fire from heaven. Let's burn them all up. Oh, they were ready. They're like, whoo, we've been just waiting for this. Because that's what the Old Testament prophets did. No. The Son of Man did not come to lose men's lives, but to save them. He didn't come to destroy people. He came to save people. He didn't come to be ministered and served by people. He came to minister and serve others. So Jesus never advocated that Christianity impose their doctrines and their views by force. Christ didn't do it. The apostles didn't do it. None of the true believers of Jesus Christ have ever done it. And that is the difference between what we could call Christianism and Christianity. You have religions that call themselves Christian, who might call Christianism, who do believe in temporal power and do lift up armies and impose a faith upon other people with a sword. That's not the doctrine of Jesus Christ. The doctrine of Jesus Christ is best embodied with Him standing on a mount and teaching the most brilliant and groundbreaking sermon ever spoken. You live in a society that is completely founded, built on the ideas of one sermon. The Sermon on the Mount. If you have not read it carefully, you should go do that. We are not going to get into that today, but I want to direct your attention over there. Read it this week. That's Matthew 5, 6, and 7. It's the Sermon on the Mount. It is the single speech that changed our entire world. And you now live in a world so infused by the teachings of that sermon that it just seems obvious. Well, of course we have a peace prize and not a war prize. That's not obvious. It's obvious today. That's because Jesus, in one sentence, set up that structure. Blessed are the peacemakers. That wasn't the case before Jesus Christ. Go read history. Peacemakers were the chumps. You know how you got to be great in every other kingdom of the world? Be a conquering general. How did Caesar take power? Augustus take power? How did Genghis Khan become great? By making world peace? No. How did Hitler think he would be great? What made Jesus unique is He came and said, it is not force, and it's not being served, and it's not subjugating people under you. The real value is serving others and subjugating yourselves to other people's needs. Tremendous teaching. In John chapter 7 and verse 45, the Pharisees, one of the several times they do this, they send out their officers, they send out the temple guard to go apprehend Jesus Christ. And it says, they come back empty-handed. They send him out, and they're supposed to go and arrest him and bring him back. And it says, then came the officers to the chief priests and Pharisees. And the Pharisees said unto them, why have you not brought him? We sent you, we gave you orders. We said, go arrest that man. And they come back empty-handed. They said, why don't you arrest him? The officers answered, never man spake like this man. They got over there to arrest him, and they heard what he's saying, and they said, we're not arresting this man. We've never heard anybody talk like this. This is people that had heard the Old Testament read endlessly for 1,000 years. And when they heard Jesus, they said, we've never heard anything like this. Now that was the testimony on the ground. You listen to the teachings of Jesus and you say, well, that's not a big deal. That's not very groundbreaking. That's because you're living in the society that they created. So of course they seem normal to you. People that had not heard him before were amazed. In fact, every time we hear of what people thought of what he taught, even his enemies, they were amazed. There's not a single instance in the scriptures where they say, but you know, this group over here, they yawned. They weren't impressed. Not one time. When Jesus Christ came, he came to give unparalleled teaching. Think about this, and we'll end this section with this. But there's so many of his teachings we could look at and just be amazed at. I'm amazed. When I read the Gospels, I am stunned at what I see. You should be too. But think about this. In John chapter 13, verse 34, think about this teaching that Jesus Christ gave. He says, a new commandment I give unto you. This is going to be his commandment, that ye love one another. As I have loved you, that ye also love one another. What a tremendous commandment. I mean, this befuddles the mind. This is Christ's commandment. You know, whenever you're a parent, and if you're a new parent, maybe this will help you. You learn this when you're a parent after a while. You don't make rules you can't enforce. That's counterproductive, right? You have to make rules that not only are they able to do, but you're willing to keep up with, right? And you're willing to do it long term. You have to look at those three things as a parent. I know this turned into a parenting conference. I'll try to keep it short. But really, you know, these are the things. You got to look at and say, can the child do what I'm asking them to do? Right? So if they can't even, you know, keep their hand out of their mouth, well then probably it's a little much to expect them to pour their own milk, right? So you gotta know, can the kid do it? And then you gotta know, is this something that I'm willing to act upon if they don't do it? Or am I just gonna keep yelling at them? Because that doesn't help. And then, am I willing to take this long term, as long as it takes to impose this, and we're going to make this happen? Because if you're not willing to answer yes to all those things, then that's a bad rule. Very bad rule. Well, if you look at all law, including the Old Testament law, you'll find that it largely follows this same pattern. It's things you can do, things you're willing to enforce, and things you're willing to do long term. Jesus Christ comes and says, I'm going to give you a new commandment. Love one another. Now that may seem obvious or simple to you, but that commandment right there should make you tremble. How are you going to do that? Do you realize that the source of all sin is not loving one another? If you loved one another, you wouldn't need any other commandment. We wouldn't need any laws. We wouldn't need any stop signs. We wouldn't need any stoplights. We wouldn't need any police. We could defund the police if we could just all love one another. This is something that is seemingly impossible. This is Christ's commandment. Love one another. Even as I have loved you, love one another. Now, what Christ is saying is, you can. You can. As I have loved you, right, is the secret. We can love others because God has loved us. You want to see the transformative power of the love of Jesus Christ? Just look at the Apostle Paul. He himself said, look at me. I am the example. Look at me. Here was a man who hated people. He was willing to torture and kill people because they thought different than him. And what a tremendous transformation. Amazing transformation in his life that the love of God produced. Let's move on Not only did He give us unparalleled teaching, He gave us unprecedented power. I don't know if you realize how powerful you are if you're a believer. You don't feel powerful. If you're a believer, you probably, this day and age, you probably feel powerless. You probably think you're an anonymous nobody with no real power and no authority and no influence. And these idiots on Instagram, get these 17-year-old idiots who have 400 million followers, and nobody cares one whit about what you say or think. But that's because you're looking at it wrong. You're looking at the fiction. You're looking at the smoke and mirrors. You're looking at, for a popular term, the matrix. You're looking at something that isn't real. Those things aren't real. Where it really matters, where it really counts, you as a Christian have been made unbelievably powerful. Christ gave that to you. Look what He says in Matthew chapter 28 and in verse 19. This is when Christ is about to ascend into heaven. He's parting away, and this is what He tells them. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. This is Christ commissioning us. A lot of times we look at this and we think, well, this is the burden of missions. This is the burden of evangelism. No. You've misunderstood if you look at it that way. If you're in the military and they come to you and they say, hey, you're a corporal and we're going to make you a sergeant, and these are now your duties, and they give you now your purpose, they give you your mission. You don't look at that and go, oh, they just burdened me. No, they just promoted you. They just said, you know what, you're now in charge of something. If you're in the military and you're worth your salt, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that promotion, for that increase in rank. And sure, it comes with responsibilities, but it comes with the authority to discharge those responsibilities. Christ didn't just give us something to do. He invested us with the authority to get it done. When we look at this, we shouldn't be looking and saying, oh, these are the things that have to be done. We should be realizing that He has just made us His ambassadors on earth. It's a big deal. He has told us, the believers, I am going to increase your rank. You're moving up. He also says in John chapter 14 and verse 27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You have the power to overcome fear. This is a huge thing. Do you realize there are people right now that are living in fear every day? They don't even know what they're afraid of, which is the worst kind of fear. They don't even know what they're afraid of. They're afraid of everything. Christ says, I haven't come to make anyone be afraid. I came to take away all fear. I came to give you peace. Do you know what power there is in having peace? That is tremendous power. Incredible power. The power to be at peace with death, to be at peace with persecution, to be at peace with whatever it is that might happen uncertain in the future, but you can say, I know in whom I believed, and that He is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day, To be able to say a statement like that? If you don't know peace, it's because you don't know Christ. You may have grown up in a Christian home. You may have read the Bible many, many times. You may have said a sinner's prayer. But if you don't know peace, you don't know Christ. Because He is the Prince of Peace. And those of us that have believed on Christ and received His peace realize how unprecedented the power of that peace is. You know what He also gave us? And we won't read the passage because we talked about this extensively previously. He gave us the power of forgiveness. This is an incredible thing. We've talked about it. I don't want to go into it and rehash it, but this is an incredible power. Only Christians can forgive other people. The Catholic Roman priest cannot. The Pope cannot. Your neighbor, if he's not saved, he can't either. The President of the United States can't forgive people, but Christians can. Christ said, whatever we bind on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever we loose on earth is loosed in heaven. This is an incredible power that Christ gave us. Not some of us, not the good ones, not the smart ones, all of us. Every person around the world and throughout history who is of Jesus Christ, who has His Spirit, who has believed on His name, has the power to forgive sins. Tremendous power. I want to close with one more thing. Christ is the great giver because He gave us an unequaled privilege. There's so many privileges that Christ has given us. We could talk about being called the sons of God. That's a tremendous privilege. The Jews were completely aghast that Jesus would call Himself that. How could He dare say such a thing? The Son of God. You know, it's one of the amazing things about the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is the first time people started really thinking about God as their personal Father. Old Testament doesn't think that way. In fact, it never uses the term that way. When it talks about God the Father, it just means the Creator. In fact, one of the minor prophets says He's the Father of everything. But in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, no, you don't understand. He's not the Father. He is our Father who cares for us personally. Amazing. That we could be called the sons of God, that we could think of God as a personal relationship, that He is actually our Father, that He engendered us, that we're born of Him. Incredible. This is the whole idea of a new birth. Ye must be born again. Born of whom? You must be born of the Father. And then He is your Father also. That's an incredible privilege. Incredible. But let's not talk about that. I want to talk about one privilege to end with, and we're going to read that in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 27. Philippians chapter 1 and verse 27. This is a tremendous privilege that Jesus Christ gives you. He is the great giver of great gifts. And this is a gift that He gives you. He says, only let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ, that whether I come and see you, or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that ye stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel, and in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evident token of perdition, but to you of salvation and that of God. For unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ, not only to believe on Him, but also to suffer for His sake, having the same conflict which ye saw in me, and now hear to be in me. This is Christ's great last gift to you. It is the gift to suffer for Him. Now that may not be the gift you're hoping for. And that's just to get you ready. You're going to get a lot of gifts this year that you weren't hoping for. You've already gotten a lot of gifts you weren't hoping for. Christ has a gift that on the face of it does not seem like the gift anybody wants. But Paul had experienced it enough that he could say confidently, this is a great gift. This is a great gift. Christ has given you, if you believe, Christ has given you the gift of suffering for His name. Why would that be a great gift? Well, in part, it's because Paul himself says in another passage of Scripture that if we suffer with Him, we'll be glorified with Him. So it comes with a good thing on the back end, right? If you suffer with Him, it's like putting your investment into Him. Well, then when it starts and pays out its dividend, you'll be on the ground floor of that investment. That's a good thing. So you have that part of it. But there's something far better than that, I think, than just that has a great back end. When we suffer with Christ, we get to identify with Him in all ways. We get to be participants of all of God's purpose. It's little children who want to come in at the very end and eat the cake. Right? There's always those people that have never grown up. They always want to come in right when it's time to have the fun. And that's what they're like, okay, and they think they're really smart. They think they're really crafty. They always show up when all the work is done, right? All the tacos are cooked and it's all sitting on the table. They're like, oh, I missed the work. Oh, time got away from me. They think they're so sneaky. They think nobody's figured them out. They don't understand. We make tacos at my house all the time because you can't hardly buy good tacos in San Antonio. So we make them at the house because we're all from Mexico. So you may think you know what Mexican food is, but we're actually Mexicans. We just don't look like Mexicans, but we are. And so we make them all the time. And the making of the tacos is a lot more fun than the eating of the tacos. Now, you may not believe me, but it's true. Now, the cleaning up after, that's not much fun. That's Terry's fun. We give that to her. That's our gift to her. No, it's the doing of it together that's the fun. Some people think that they can just come into Christianity right at the end and just get what they think is the good part. But the good part is all of it. And Christ has given you this great gift that you get to participate. Even though you're 2,000 years late, you still get to be a participant in the entire thing. Like Paul said of himself, you can say of yourself, you get to fill up in your body whatever might lack of the sufferings of Christ. Is there something out there that might have been left incomplete? You get to make that up. That's a great thing. You get to have a part. You get to have a purpose. You get to be more than just a consumer. You get to be a contributor. That's good. Anyone who has a job understands that's good. A lot of people thought, ooh, when the lockdown started, I won't have to go to work. It's going to be so great. They found out after a little bit of time, not that great. That's horrible. Sitting at home, being bossed around by your wife all day, not fun. Not fun at all. Having nothing to do, having no purpose. You don't even feel like an adult anymore. You feel like a wart on society. Christ has given you great purpose. Amazing purpose. Sure, it comes at some cost. It's a small cost. You know what Paul said about that cost? When we look at the glory that is to be revealed, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's just nothing. Christ is the great giver. That is why we worship Jesus Christ. We thank you for being here with us today, and we'll see you next Sunday.